NFL Live. The Ravens are in the building for off-season workouts. The headline is Lamar Jackson's there. And wait until you hear what Kyle Hamilton had to say about the defense. Plus, we're just 2 weeks away from the draft. Should the Bears, Commanders, and Panthers be in search of playmakers for their young quarterbacks? We have some answers there, and there's nothing more exciting than a draft night trade. We have some possibilities, and one of them actually includes Max Crosby. Stick around to hear what our experts think. And boy, experts is the operative word. We have the brain trust here today. I'm Hannah Storm along with Kevin Clark, Bill Barnwell, and Mina Kimes. I mean, how did we get so lucky, people? We're all going to be smarter after this hour. This is new on NFL Live. Miami edge rusher Ruben Bain is visiting with the Chiefs today. Kansas City holds the number 9 pick and has done work on all the top pass rushers. Mel Kiper has Bain going there in his latest mock. So, Mina, why don't you kick it off for us today on NFL Live? How do you like that fit, Bain and the Chiefs?
I love it. I think this would be a dream outcome for Kansas City, quite frankly, in part because they really need pass rush. Last season, their highest-ranked edge rusher and pass rush win was George Karlaftis, who ranked 25th at the position. They need juice there as part of that four-man rush in particular, and juice is exactly what Ruben Bain Jr. brings to the table. His get-off is extremely explosive. He plays with violent hands. The way he converts speed to power is special. His motor also runs hot versus the run. And I think for Kansas City, he fits their timeline because this is a team that should be competitive every year, including next year, and he's a pro-ready player. I also like it when you look at the draft as a whole. They are picking later in the first round, and they have other needs, corner, wide receiver. I think that they are more likely to find an impactful receiver at the end of the first round than they are to find an edge rusher who's anywhere close to Bain. I think there's a pretty big drop-off after 3. So to me, this would be a dream pick for Kansas City, and they better be hoping it happens.
Yeah, landing one of those top 3 edge rushers would be fantastic. I'm intrigued to see how Steve Spagnuolo might use Ruben Bain, though, because of what the Chiefs have up front in Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a defensive tackle in name only. He does play a lot on the inside, but he can pick and choose his matchups on passing downs, and he loves to rush from outside. He's an edge rusher a fair amount of the time, and so that actually fits with what Ruben Bain might be as a pro defender. He can rush from the edge. There are those concerns about his arm length, which we've heard a billion times by now, but I do think he's going to have a stretch in the pros. He's going to be rushing from the interior, rushing against guards, where he can kind of translate that power quickly against maybe some shorter or at the very least, guys who don't have those pro-length tackle arms. And so I think Ruben Bain could be a guy where they sort of flip the defense. You play Chris Jones on the outside sometimes on passing downs, move Ruben Bain inside. That could work with the four-man rush.
To me, the most important part of Ruben Bain's fit with the Chiefs is how many big games he excelled in. And that's why Mina mentioned it about the pro-ready type of player he is. I just look at this. He had, and I couldn't believe this stat, if you just take the pressures he had in the college football playoff, 23, and you put them in the ACC, he would have been, just the pressures he had in the playoff would have qualified him to be a top 20 rusher in the country. Okay, that is just unbelievable to me when you just think about what he was able to do against Ohio State, 9 pressures alone. What he was able to do against Notre Dame.
We really
yeah, I was gonna say.
Show this.
No, I was gonna say he understood how to set up Notre Dame to where he and Mesidor closed that game, won that game. He is a clutch pass rusher. That's a position we don't talk about having clutch traits or needing clutch traits. He was setting up that line all game for the last possession when C.J. Carr got mauled. I'm sorry, that's the only way to put it. He got mauled on that last possession. And so
it is what it is.
What he was able to do against Texas A&M, Ohio State, Indiana, Ole Miss, he's a big game player, and the Chiefs need that because week 1, they're going to need to hit the ground running.
Can I just say that about clutch? 25 quarterback pressures in the 4th quarter last season, so that was the most in FBS. All right, we've given him his flowers. He was great against Notre Dame. Let's move on. All right, 10 teams, new head coaches, starting off-season workouts this week. Really, it was the biggest story of the week, and it was at the start of the week. Lamar Jackson, he showed up on the first day of off-season activities, along with Derrick Henry and new addition Trey Hendrickson. A star safety, Kyle Hamilton, spoke about the expectations that their new head coach Jesse Minter has for the defense this season.
Him along with Coach Weaver, they've both done a great job so far, just kind of laying out what's been in the past and where we want to go in the future, and how the standard has not been met and upheld, and we need to kind of fix that.
Trey Hendrickson should be a big help to that pass rush. It was one of the worst in the NFL last season, and we're talking about the Ravens here, ranking 30th in pressure percentage. How about this? 31st in sack percentage, their lowest sack percentage since 2010. Bill, how can they get to the passer this season?
They have to fix things on the interior. One of the guys who was in the mix the prior 3 seasons when they were in the top 10 in sack rate in 22, 23, and 24 was Nnamdi Madubuike, who did not play very much last year after suffering a scary neck injury. They did just not have a replacement for him on the roster. They were 29th in pressure rate from their defensive tackles without him for most of last season. We don't know if he's going to play, and hopefully he's able to come back and be the guy he was in years past. But the Ravens could look towards having some help on the interior. Of course, they added Trey Hendrickson this offseason to play on the edge. But I think about someone like Texas A&M tackle Tyler Onwuatem, who might be available on day 2 of the draft. You kind of have to balance that line between maybe we get Madubuike back, maybe we don't, but can we bring in somebody who is going to be a supplement on the interior? Maybe we don't have to blitz as often. Maybe that makes the secondary's life easier. Ravens have to be able to win without blitzing because Jesse Minter wants to keep those guys in coverage and working on the back end.
Bill makes a great point about Madubuike. You know, whether or not he returns is kind of one of the big stories of the NFL offseason. It's flying under the radar. And it's one of those things where when you watch the draft, you learn more about the team's intentions and their existing roster, because if they don't take a defensive tackle, perhaps it'll signal that there's some comfort in Baltimore that their star interior rusher will return. But there are other needs on this defense quietly that have amassed over the years. Linebacker, I would say, is one, and then pressingly, I would add cornerback. Nate Wiggins has become a true star, but opposite him, you got Chido Awuzie, who came back, or they signed this offseason, and you know, I think that's a position that they could look to upgrade, especially with Marlon Humphrey aging. You know, he's their nickel. Safety, they're set, but it's easy to imagine if they don't upgrade at corner, that being a position that teams go after, as they did at times last year.
Life moves very fast when you're talking about NFL rosters, because this time last year, I think we all would have agreed that the Ravens had, if not the best roster, a top 5 roster.
Right up there with the Eagles. That's
Absolutely.
What we were saying.
Coming into this saying, where are their flaws? They're going to the Super Bowl, all that. And then Mina just detailed it. They've got holes at basically every level. And Trey Hendrickson is not going to solve everything for them, nor would Max Crosby. It would have been a great addition if he was able to come on, but they've still got holes. I talked to Jesse Minter last week at the owners' meetings. He pointed to Malachi Starks. He's a second-year safety out of Georgia. I felt like last year Starks was going to be able to free up Kyle Hamilton to be the best player in football. He can play anywhere. If you look at his snap numbers, he's basically the only guy in football that's able to line up at the line of scrimmage and then almost linebacker and then safety in equal parts. Okay, he is unbelievable, and I think that if you start rushing the passer again in a more, and Hendrickson's going to help here, in a more efficient way, it's going to help that back end be more creative, and then Kyle Hamilton will be, at worst, a top 3 defensive player in this league this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, their sack leader had, 5 sacks last season.
That's not Ravens football.
Very un-Ravens-like. I'll say they got to get back to their DNA. All right, coming up on NFL Live, we're hoping to build off a franchise record 9-win increase under rookie head coach Liam Cohen. What a year they had. They did lose their starting running back Travis Etienne and all-pro linebacker Devin Lloyd to free agency. And also worth noting, they don't have any first-round picks, one of 5 teams without one. Their first pick doesn't come until 56. And we know that Cohen and James Gladstone both worked for the Rams under Les Snead. He's a guy who doesn't hang on to his draft picks. They talked about waiting until round 2 to pick, and this is new on NFL Live.
You know, Liam's been through with me before.
Waited a lot longer before.
There is no doubt about it. We have waited longer. There is no doubt.
It's fun. We were having a blast.
104 was our first pick.
Okay.
So we at least get to cut that in half a little bit.
There's I guess a high comfort level there for those guys. Mina, when they do get to draft, what should their priorities be? Where do you see them going?
Yeah, you know what, I'd say the good news, or at least the maybe not so bad news about them having not having a lot of picks, is the roster's in pretty good shape. You know, I was looking at the Jags depth chart on both sides of the ball, and I didn't see glaring needs. That said, there are certainly areas where they could improve, and for me, it's really the spine of the defense. They just signed Trayvon Walker to an extension opposite Josh Allen. They're set at edge, but between that, I do think that they could get more pass rush from the interior of the defensive line. And then going up the spine, linebacker, Devin Lloyd's gone, so you could get a new running mate for Foye Olukun. And then safety, same thing. Antonio Johnson was excellent last year, could add a safety there next to him. I thought the defense overperformed last year with their new defensive coordinator, Anthony Caponelli. They get to retain him. To me, they could be served well by adding talent on that side of the ball.
Also, apparently, they're getting healthier. Gladstone said that Travis Hunter, as we all know, he missed the second half of the season with that knee injury. He's expected to be a full go by training camp. The question is, Kevin, how do you use him?
Last year, Travis Hunter played 65 snaps per game, and it was 43 on offense and the rest on defense. I would flip that. I would major him on defense. It's supply and demand. There's a lot more elite wide receivers in this league than there are elite cornerbacks, and if you've got one who can take one side of the field away, I would hammer that over and over and over again. I think on the offensive side of the ball, they've got the core pieces. Trevor Lawrence, in the last half of the season, was driving the ball down the field. He was using his legs really effectively. Liam Cohen really brought out the best in Trevor Lawrence. I'm fine on the offensive side of the ball. We saw a proof of concept there on the defensive end. Put Travis Hunter back there, let him major in corner, and let that defense really thrive. Mina said they overachieved last year. I think they can really take a next step this year with Travis Hunter.
Kevin's right. That's the right spot for Travis Hunter as cornerback. And last year, not only with Travis Hunter, but elsewhere, it felt like they were kind of figuring things out as the year went along. Some weeks Travis Hunter was playing 40-plus snaps on defense. Other weeks he was playing 6. You're not going to have steadiness and consistency in your secondary playing that way. Parker Washington wasn't even in the rotation to start the year at wide receiver. By the end of the year, he was their top wideout. Walker Little started at left tackle. By the end of the season, they preferred Cole Van Landen there. They make trades at cornerback. They bring in Greg Newsom, then take him out a little bit. He doesn't come back this year. It felt like a coaching staff that was kind of figuring out who are the guys we trust, who are the guys we actually want to have in key spots. And this year, hopefully, starting with Travis Hunter, but then throughout the lineup, it's about more consistency, more stability, more we know who we want on the field for 40, 50, 60 snaps a game. If they can do that, they might be more consistent. That was really a problem for them for most of the season.
It's so crazy. He's the only player in the last 15 years with 300 offensive snaps, 150 defensive snaps in a season, and he did it all in 7 games.
Incredible.
But he's got to buy in. Whatever their plan is, he has to buy into it. All right, still to come. After the Bears offense took a alive exactly 2 weeks to the draft, we're going to look at some young quarterbacks and whether they should be looking for help. I like that help wanted sign. Caleb Williams is up first. So the Bears prioritized adding some playmakers last offseason. Most of them are still there. They did obviously trade DJ Moore in March, but they have a pretty good young playmaking core. Anungai, Burden, Loveland, they're all coming off really strong rookie seasons. So Mina, what do you think when it gets to draft day? Do they need to add playmakers or should they focus elsewhere?
I would focus on the defense if I'm the Chicago Bears. You could consider adding an offensive tackle depending on how you feel about Jones and Trapillo, but to me, the defensive side of the ball, particularly the front 7, is where they need help, and really why they lost games last year. Insufficient pass rush, so an edge rusher would be a welcome addition. They could also add defensive tackle, quite frankly, or a linebacker. There's some talented young players in the secondary, but up front, they just weren't getting enough pressure, and they were putting those DBs when they're healthy in tough positions. That's what I would focus on if I'm Chicago.
I agree. In the first round, going after some defensive help makes sense for a team that was really turnovers or bust on defense last season. But they do have those 2 second-round picks. Remember, they traded DJ Moore and got a second-round pick back. And I wonder if one of those selections goes for a replacement for DJ Moore. I think they need that guy who's a big body, can help Caleb Williams, who had the second highest off-target rate of any quarterback in football last season. And I look at Denzel Boston, who might be there in the first half of the second round if they want to trade up perhaps or move some of those second-round picks around. He had a drop rate his last 2 years at Washington of 1.5%. That is one of the more reliable targets you have of any player in college football. They need that guy who can be a tight window receiver. Again, a big body or reliable pair of hands. They have exciting playmakers, guys who can create after the catch. I think they need that guy who can be the player Caleb Williams throws into tight windows and who comes out of it with the football.
That's a good job by you, Bill, to mention Denzel Boston's catch rate, because last year no team lost more yards to drop passes than the Chicago Bears. 370 air yards dropped by Bears skill guys. That's bad. However, I'm not addressing that till day 2 or day 3, as Bill mentioned here, because I'm looking at this defense and I'm seeing a defense that in the run game got blown off the ball. And the fact that they didn't get any quick pressures is a real problem. They were historically low in quick pressures. That's pressures under 2.5 seconds. Third lowest marks by any team since 2018. You have to fix that if you're going to compete with these Super Bowl contenders. They want to take the next step. That means NFC title game, that means Super Bowl. You got to rush the passer to get there. Work on that day 1.
Yeah, I mean, they were the best pass blocking team, but the second worst pass rushing team last season. All right, let's go to Jaden Daniels in Washington. After an NFC Championship appearance, the Commanders regressed last year. 10 different receivers caught a pass. I think that should say health wanted instead of health wanted, but does he need more help? Okay, now keep in mind, Deebo Samuel, Austin Eckler, they are remaining free agents right now. Washington looks like they're a little thin on playmakers. I mean, they did add Rashad White from the Bucs, tight end Chig Okongo, but Terry McLaurin remains the only notable playmaker from a year ago, and Scary Terry only played 10 games last season. So, Bill, do they need to add some playmakers or focus elsewhere?
Yeah, I do believe they need to add another wide receiver. We saw them really slip last year on 3rd down and 4th down. They were 4th best in the NFL in Jaden Daniels' rookie season and converting on those downs. Last year when Jaden Daniels was on the field, they were 25th in conversion rate on 3rd and 4th down. And that could be a place they address in the draft, but there is a wide receiver out there, a former 49ers wide receiver, who interests me. And it's not Brandon Ayuk. It's Juwan Jennings, who might be the best free agent left on the market. And if there was anybody who played up on 3rd downs in tight windows when his team needed a conversion, it was Juwan Jennings. He's great after the catch. He's great at muscling through tackle attempts. He is a reliable target. And Terry McLaurin's going to be a special player, obviously, going to create plays that no one else can make on that offense. They like what Chig Okonkwo is going to bring. They're going to have a consistent run game because of what Jaden Daniels brings. But if they are going to run more play action, more under center stuff, I think that plays into Juwan Jennings and what he can do on those key downs.
I love Jennings. They need a receiver. I agree with Bill. And where they're picking is really interesting because Carnell Tate, who many people expect to be the first receiver selected, Ohio State also, right, like Terry McLaurin, I think would be a dream fit in this offense. He, to me, is a classic Z. You already have an X in Terry McLaurin, so they would pair well together. I think he can win down, he's got explosive playmaking ability that pairs well with Jaden Daniels' skill set. The only issue in my mind is they're picking right behind Cleveland, who are probably the team most linked to Carnell Tate, in the draft. They also might have the option of taking an edge rusher, and it would be hard to pass up one of them at 7. But Carnell Tate on Washington would be an excellent fit. That's exactly the type of receiver they need in that room.
Yeah, an absolute dream fit, right? Kev, you just talked to Dan Quinn about Jaden Daniels. What did he tell you?
He told me that, first of all, that the competitive fire within him is something that you're going to see this year that's really special. So that's the first part of it. But more practically, he talked about this new offense. Cliff Kingsbury is gone. David Blah is in. And what that's going to provide, Dan Quinn said, was a lot more play action and deep shots off the play action. Remember, Jaden Daniels was essentially the best deep ball thrower, especially down the slot seams, in the history of college football. Joe Burrow is now number 2 because of what Jaden Daniels is able to do at LSU down there, targeting the deep part of the field. They want to see that more in Washington, and they think that play action, off the run action is going to give them deep shot ability. So I'm with Mina. They need a receiver as part of that. So I would look at that. Maybe that's a Bernard from Alabama, somebody on day 2. I don't know if drafting one in the top 10 is going to be good value, but they need somebody to help stretch the field there. Obviously, Terry McLaurin's going to give you a lot there, but I think as part of this new explosive offense, give me one more weapon there.
Interesting to hear that. They've been under center at the lowest rate in the NFL.
Yep, that is
they drafted Jaden
flipping.
Daniels with,
Under center, run action, deep shots.
That's going to be interesting
Get ready,
to
DC.
see. Yeah, okay. I love it. Good info. Yeah. In Carolina, the Panthers are looking to build on their playoff appearance last season. Does Bryce Young need more playmakers to help him as he resurrected his career last year? Well, Carolina, notably without Rico Dowdle, who signed with the Steelers after a career year. Obviously, they do have Chuba Hubbard back. They got an impressive rookie season from Tate McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker. They are entering year 3. Field Yates is reporting that, we just talked about him, wide receiver Denzel Boston. He's
all over
with
the show.
Panthers today. Go, Denzel. As you may know, he played for Jed Fish his final 2 seasons at Washington. Same system that Tate McMillan played under Fish at Arizona, your offensive rookie of the year. So if we're, drawing all those lines, main question, do the Panthers need playmakers?
No, and they certainly, that's a great visit for them, but they have Tate McMillan, and I think they're fine, especially in the first round where Denzel Boston will likely end up going. I'm looking at this Carolina team, and I'm seeing a build that is self-aware and on time and on schedule. I love everything about the way they're building this. Devin Lloyd in free agency, Jalen Phillips. It's not an overpay if it solves your problems, which it does. I'm looking at this quarterback, Bryce Young, and I'm seeing potential, if you build it the right way, for almost like a Seattle type of situation where it's above average quarterback play with an awesome roster, and in 2 years we go, boom, this team can really, really compete. It's not going to be this year, I don't think, but every step of the way has made sense to me. I think they go maybe corner, maybe safety. If you want to do a skilled guy, target a tight end, but I think there's more needs than just outside wide receiver type of guy.
Panthers roster is in good shape.
Yeah.
I echo what Kevin said about the build. When you look at the depth chart, it's actually impressive, how quickly they've taken team and added young talent and made some key signings in free agency that really don't leave them with that many glaring needs. And I think for that reason, I am comfortable with them taking a receiver fairly early, because while McMillan was undeniably a hit and Jalen Coker has been a pleasant surprise, I do think that they could use speed and suddenness at the wide receiver position. And one of the players I love for them is KC Concepcion. Mekhi Lemon, who Field Yates mocked to them, also to me makes sense as somebody who can work underneath, complementing McMillan. So, the Panthers have what everybody wants. They have a number 1 wide receiver who's a big-bodied X, but that allows them to look to pursue, other traits at the position, and I think they're going to have some interesting opportunities to do so in the first round.
They could certainly go wide receiver. I do wonder if tight end might be the place to go. Not necessarily in the first round, but if tight end could be the thing they hit here in this draft. That graphic we saw a minute ago had quarterbacks, had running backs, had wide receivers, had no tight ends because they're not catching the football in Carolina. They're 30th in receiving yards from their tight ends over the past 2 seasons. Another like Jatavian Sanders, who did get hurt, missed a chunk of last year. He's averaged 18 receiving yards per game over his 2 seasons in Carolina. I think they can do more. Again, that's not a day 1 thing to me. It's not a first-round pick thing. Maybe they look at Kenyon Sadiq, perhaps, but I do think maybe day 2, second round, third round, they can lean towards adding a tight end, someone who can run away from coverage. They have big bodies. They have guys who can win contested catches. Everyone there is 6'4" or taller, but can they get that tight end who stretches the field horizontally, runs away, creates after the catch? That's something I believe they could add.
One thing Mina said that piqued my interest, she said that the roster is in good shape. And when I think about the best teams in the NFL, and I'm going to put the Panthers in this, they address their needs in free agency, so there's no screaming need in the draft. I think a little bit about also the Chiefs signing Kenneth Walker, too. Everybody's linking them to Jeremiah Love. Not so fast. You don't have to draft a running back now in the top 10. And I think about, again, the Lloyd signings, the Jalen Phillips signings. They don't have to do anything. There's a very famous quote from Billy Beane in Moneyball: if you have to do something, you're screwed. The best teams are not backing themselves into a corner. They're signing these guys in free agency, and they're able to have wiggle room in the draft. That's why I think if you add a safety, great. If you add a tight end, great. But things are moving apace at Carolina because everything is thought
Yeah,
out.
it's like a complimentary piece. And they have, I mean, since our buddy Greg Olson was there, they really haven't had a tight end presence. Only 18 touchdowns since he left in 2020 from the tight end position. All right, coming up, he proposes trades for every single pick in the draft. So let's get into it, starting with a trade for Max Crosby. Poor Max, another destination.
Wow.
Bill, what do you have here?
Well, we're sending Max Crosby to the Philadelphia Eagles for the Eagles' first-round pick, a third-rounder next year, and Nolan Smith, who was so good for the Eagles in the playoff run to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Raiders, of course, add a young edge rusher to replace Crosby with some upside. They go out and get a first-round pick to address their roster. They were already about to trade Crosby to the Ravens for 2 first-round picks. That was kind of a reset, time to move on for a young team, for a player who's in his prime. And I mean, I don't have to explain this to Eagles fans. Adding Max Crosby, a superstar in the prime of his career, at a position Howie Roseman covets, feels like an obvious move to me from the Eagles side of things.
Boy, I sure feel sorry for Max from the Max side of things. But Mina, what do you think of this trade?
Oh, I mean, he would be in Philadelphia and potentially on a contender, so I don't know how sorry I'd feel for him in that regard. I would like this a lot for Las Vegas, starting there. I love getting pick 23 because I do think that they would have some shots at receivers there who could be very helpful to the young quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. I think it's a good value given everything that's transpired. And as far as Philadelphia goes, well, Hannah, frankly, it comes down to, do you believe the Baltimore Ravens, right?
Right.
If you don't, and you feel good about his health, then yeah, obviously, especially since you are in a win-now timeline, and if you think he can contribute this year, that's massive. But if you are skeptical, and based on the lack of news around the league, seems like some teams are, I would be apprehensive of doing a trade.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I'm wondering about Bill's eval of the Philadelphia Eagles medical staff. Is he saying they're better or worse than the Ravens medical staff? Are the standards higher or lower? I don't know. But obviously this would be a home run. Putting Max Crosby in a vacuum in Philadelphia would be unbelievable. It's Howie's MO to take big swings, zig when everybody's zagging, the whole deal. I just don't know if they're going to part with the first-round pick. That's the question to me. But I think that Max Crosby, demon against the run, culture guy, a guy who wants to play in big games, deserves to play on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football and in playoff games and deep into January. This would be great for him. I just don't know. I mean, it just goes into, as Mina just said, it goes into what you think when you get in and look at those x-rays. Do you say, hey, and are you comfortable? If it says, hey, we're going to get 2 great years out of this guy, is Howie comfortable with that? It is a team-building question that is very serious, and I really do think it's one of the most fascinating things to watch over the next 2 weeks. Does anybody get back into the Max Crosby sweepstakes?
Absolutely fascinating, right? And what does it say about the Ravens if somebody gives them the green light and trades something significant? I don't, Bill, what do you think about what you've been hearing here?
Well, in addition to my primary job as a fake trade expert, my side job is doctor. And as a doctor of psychology for the Philadelphia Eagles, they need a culture change. Bringing in Max Crosby to that building, to that room where everybody was mad and angry and upset last year, I feel like is the logical place to go. It's a risk, no question, but it's the kind of risk Howie Roseman likes to take. I think by November, Max Crosby and Big Dom are going to be hosting a podcast together.
Oh, my gosh. I think I would pay to hear that. Okay, well, to be continued. All right, let's go on to another trade from the All Trades mock. This one between the Vikings and the Rams. This is actually a really fun game we're playing here. Okay, Bill, take it away.
Yep, so the Rams are trading down here, getting a couple extra picks. They are getting another quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, who's going to be their developmental quarterback behind the MVP and Matthew Stafford. Vikings have pretty clearly moved on from J.J. McCarthy by signing Kyler Murray. He's not part of their future. This trade values him around a 4th-round pick level. That might seem a little high given how much he struggled early on last year. But remember, end of the year, 4-game stretch, passer rating over 100. We saw some positive strides. Admittedly, there were some bad defenses on the other side of that field, but we saw some progress from J.J. McCarthy. Sean McVay has a track record of turning quarterbacks around, improving them, going back to Jared Goff, of course, but Baker Mayfield, I do think that's a logical kind of step for them to make, and they still only move down a few picks and still get another 3rd rounder to add to their mix. So I think a trade that can make sense for the Rams and the Vikings. Do move up ahead of the Bucs, ahead of the Jets. Probably teams looking at defensive back, they could get the safety of their choice. Maybe even if Caleb Downs drops, that could be a spot for him to land to the Minnesota Vikings.
Kevin, what do you think?
Bailey, you are the fake trade guru, but even the greats have missteps. Michael Jordan missed shots. Wayne Gretzky missed the net. This is a complete miss. First of all, you mentioned the progress J.J. McCarthy made. I missed it. Sorry, I missed it somewhere. And I also think that Kevin O'Connell has some of the best plays in football. He improves quarterbacks. He's the quarterback whisperer just as much as anybody else in the league. So if he was going to thrive anywhere, it'd also be in Minnesota with, by the way, Justin Jefferson and that infrastructure that we saw Sam Darnold in thrive in the year before. So I just don't think this is a good change of scenery. I don't think it's worth the pick swap, even throwing in the third-round pick. I just don't think it's that kind of value. If you're taking on J.J. McCarthy right now, it's not involving swapping first-round picks. It would be a mid- or late-round pick at best. I also just don't think that he's ready to be an heir apparent somewhere. I don't think going into a system right now and learning all of that, I just don't think that's healthy for anybody. I think the best option here is for J.J. McCarthy to go back to Minnesota, compete with Kyler Murray, lose the quarterback competition, which he will, but then learn and give it another go next year. I don't think a trade is going to work because Kevin O'Connell can do anything Sean McVay can do at the quarterback position.
So I actually don't dislike this, setting aside the actual compensation and pick change. I like the idea of McCarthy going to the Rams, and I think it would lessen the pressure, obviously, on him to play immediately. You'd have incredible development in that system. He could no longer go by 9 because they got a 9 at quarterback already. It's a win-win in that regard. Where I get a little bit nervous, it's actually you're not really giving up a ton, right, because of the movement is small and the draft pick. But for the Rams, that's actually like a bit of a crucial change because I do think the Rams in the first round should be taking a wide receiver or even maybe a tight end. And if they were to drop to 18, suddenly you're picking behind Baltimore and the Jets, two teams that are probably going to take one of those players that I think they would add. So I do worry about that particular movement, Bill. But as far as the player, maybe elsewhere in the draft you would consider making a trade because I do think it makes sense.
I want to point out, Kevin Clark said that the best thing for J.J. McCarthy was to lose a quarterback competition. That's a new one for me.
There's no good options here right now after last year. I'm just trying to make life easy on him. He needs to sit for a full year somewhere, whether it's Minnesota, maybe the Rams, if the trade was just, as Mina said, was just less impactful. I think moving first-round picks right now for J.J. McCarthy, again, even though it's a swap, is just not something I want to be involved in right now. So I think J.J. McCarthy should just sit and learn.
Yeah.
Not everything deserves a reaction.
Guy who had the worst completion percentage in the NFL last season.
Yeah.
58%. Yeah, we can leave it. We would hope that he would reclaim his career as we have seen others do. We would hope that.
Kevin O'Connell's obsessed with the quarterback journey, and maybe this is just part of the journey.
Okay, there you go. Still ahead after a rough second half of the season for